Sidebar is a career growth platform. It started off as a peer group for senior execs, and from then on, it's evolved into something much more. I'm one of the founding members at Sidebar. I myself personally benefited a lot from this community of amazing people. And so this is my way of giving back to the community. So I host the speaker series for Sidebar. My name's Sue Belagodu. I'm a seasoned product exec with a tech background. I built an AI startup myself about 2 years ago, and it was fantastic. The experience was amazing. And very soon I realized building them is becoming easier, but selling AI products is getting harder by the day. I'm no longer with that company as an operator. So now I help other AI startups go to market and build their AI GTM stack, which is kind of how I stumbled upon Ample Market. It's one of my favorite products out there, and not saying it because Mica's on the call. I absolutely loved Ample Market. I use it for my customers. I personally use it as well. So I figured, they've built such a fantastic product. Why not have one of the co-founders with us to walk us through what was their thought process and how did they go about building this amazing product that is fantastic AI, but also there's this human touch. So that's going to be our conversation for today. Today with us, we have Mica, who is the co-founder of Ample Market. He's also a fantastic human being. Mica and the co-founders of Ample Market have been together for many years, and they've built other companies together as well. So you know that it's coming from a really strong place. I typically think that people introduce themselves the best. So though I have like a written intro for Mica, I'd love to. Mica, welcome to the Sidebar Speaker Series. Thank you for speaking with our community members. I'd love for you to do your own intro in your own words. What should we know about you? And then we can jump right into the session.
First of all, thank you so much for the kind words and for having me, Sue. I truly appreciate it. My name is Mica. I'm one of the founders at Ample Market. We're three founders, and our backgrounds, as you were saying, we've been working together for a while. I don't have at all a background in sales. Again, I'll explain what Ample Market is, but it's we're two physicists and one computer scientist. So we have we bring this novel, different perspective into the sales space. Again, AI and machine learning was something that I was actually very much doing during my physics PhD. So I kind of dabble into it, nothing what we see AI being today. It's such an interesting and exciting world, and I'm really happy to be building and kind of enabling sales teams in this space. And as you said, just one thing is kind of it's never been easier to create digital solutions or software products. It's never been harder to actually distribute them. It's so funny.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many AI enthusiasts, and one of the biggest things that people struggle with is how do you differentiate enthusiasts from actual buyers, and how the signals have changed for traditional SaaS company buying signals. So much has changed. So thank you for being here. I think we can dive into the session if you want to take us through your slides. Now is a good time.
Awesome. Let me share my screen and let me know if you can all. By the way, if there are questions, if there are
I can
just
surface them to you. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to kind of fully interrupt me if you want. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me just put this in slideshow mode. All good?
Yeah. Looks good.
Awesome. Okay, let's go. I want to talk a little bit about building AI products for sales teams specifically, but with this approach of again, you mentioned the human in the loop, but the augmentation of the human, not so much the displacement of the human, which is when we first launched our AI product in 2024, we took this very strong stance of and if you go to our website, we say AI plus human, right? We took a very strong stance saying we believe in AI kind of empowering the human. I really believe that you're kind of in this decade of agents and humans kind of collaborating versus agents fully displacing humans, especially in sales. Sales is so peculiar. And we were very contrarian because at the time there was like a lot of like talk about the AI SDRs and like some of these AI SDR companies raising a ton of money. I can show some data about that. But yeah, it's like very important for us to kind of like augment the human. That's very core to who we are as a company. No, just like about myself, you have my email. So after this session, if you want to email me, by the way, feel free to kind of reach out. And again, we're building for sales teams, but we like to think from first principles, really. Like it's such an important thing to kind of like know exactly who you're building for. It's kind of like sometimes and even myself, like sometimes you forget that. Like you're trying at the beginning, you're just creating a product and you're putting it out there, and like you have like all of these like different product requests, and like they come from different users, from a growth marketeer, from like a sales rep, from an E, from a founder. And it's kind of like really easy to get confused, to who you're building for. And so for us, we're building for this person that we call the quota carrying reps. And from a first principles thinking, it's kind of like these people, they need to one, start conversations, progress conversations, or close them. Meaning like they either want to get in front of like a potential customer, they want to progress the conversation with the customer, or they want to kind of like close new deals, right? And so sometimes they're called founders for small companies. Sometimes they're called CEOs. Sometimes they're called account executives. Sometimes they're called sales development reps. Sometimes they're called business development reps. So they have all of these names, but like from a first principles thinking, their core responsibility is like start, progress, or close conversations. So that's basically how we start and how we think about this. And then given that that's the case, like let's double down and like let's take a look at like what the main challenges are for these teams today and what we believe the laws of gravity in this space are going to be in the future. Gravity is changing, right? There's like we could actually say that's even funny enough. Like if you think about like the fact that like Gemini's or Google's like IDE is called anti-gravity. Like there's like some anti-gravity happening in the software space because it's never been easier to actually create digital solutions, right? Potentially all of you have experienced this. Whereas like in the sales space, gravity is getting a bit harder. So let's take a look at just a few of the challenges that like sales teams are facing today. First and foremost, they are still operating from a very, very fragmented tech stack, right? So as you might be familiar with this, but like, SaaS companies have a lot of software across a bunch of different teams. And this fragmentation is really even more exacerbated when you talk about GTM or sales teams. And again, like that makes their jobs really hard. Like if you're actually operating different tools, it's really like you're doing a lot of context switching. And if you think just from the perspective of an SDR, now a bunch of our personal SDRs are just out of college, and I see the same like within our companies. Not only do they need to learn how to do sales, they need to learn about your company and all of your objection handling, and then you tell them like, here's 10 different tools, go learn how to operate them, and then do your job. And by the way, if you're not hitting your quota in 3 months, you're fired, right? So like there's a few problems that are actually tied to this. Then one other thing, and actually this is by construction from like sales teams. Like it used to be 10 years ago so easy to kind of just like set up like just motions, activities, like just pounce like all of your deals, all of your accounts, and some people will actually reply. So like we call that the brute force approach, right? And if you remember Star Wars, like that's not the way how like Luke Skywalker and like R2D2 actually defeated the Death Star is actually much more targeted, tailored approach, and that's what we think like we should be doing more of, like more targeted, less volume of approach. And the problem with this, like the activities and they're not being correlated with success, is that the way we set up like our sales organizations today, or the way that these teams are actually being measured in the CRM is by their activities, right? So you're not really capturing time spent doing research, right? You don't capture quality of outreach, right? You don't like if a rep is only sending like 3 emails, like you didn't capture the fact that they're actually spending like an hour researching for all of these 3 emails. And again, and we know that sales cycles are kind of like delayed. And again, if they don't get success very, very fast, they get let go. Whereas like for other reps, like again, like you just see them like, sending a lot of connection requests, sending a lot of emails, just doing a lot of cold calling. And these two things are no longer correlated with success. They used to be 10, 15 years ago, no longer the case. And so what do we see? We see, and again, this is data for the past 6 years, but you see interaction rates just going down, right? So you see really like engagement rates across sales teams just not being what they used to be. And again, the trend is not leveled yet. So it's still the problem that actually engagement rates are going down. If you think about this with the anti-gravity space of like creating digital solutions easier, like I really, and going back to the space analogy, I like to think about companies as like planets, and the number of planets is going to grow exponentially, meaning because it's so easy to create a planet, like so easy to create a digital solution. The space between these planets is kind of like becoming foggier because the cost to create information became zero, right? So like nowadays, like creating a blog post was really hard like 5 years ago. Very easy nowadays. Again, AI slop, but anyways, like it's still easy. And so like the space between these planets is kind of like becoming foggier, and like the jobs of like sales teams or GTM teams is kind of like to connect these nodes, these planets, but they actually have like a really hard time kind of like visualizing where they are. And the other really interesting thing is that since there's an exponential growth in the number of planets, there's going to be a lot more connections that can be made, which is so interesting, right? I think that's going to just call for more sales teams rather than less in the future. And another thing, and this is actually, if I remember this correctly, yeah, it's by Anthropic. The number of like sales teams using AI, or like the percentage of like sales reps using AI, is still very slow. Like it's the adoption, the diffusion there of AI within like sales orgs is not as fast as it is like in other departments. And again, if you talk with a VP of engineering when with a VP of sales, and you ask them about changes in the past 2 years, it's staggering. Like in engineering, like everybody's using like an AI focused IDE. Maybe 6 months ago it was Cursor, maybe today it's Cloud Code, and these things change very fast. But like the change is undeniable. Like the production function of like engineering teams is like undeniably getting faster with AI. Whereas, like, if you think about like AI in sales, it's kind of like it's still not there, and like it's mostly being done by, you having the best reps, kind of like leveraging ChatGPT or Claude for their own research. It's not something that is embedded in their workflows, and we can talk about this and why this is the case. And I think this is very much related to what I was talking about, like the non-consolidated aspect of their workflows. There's like 10 different tools that all apply AI at their own rates, and then like these 10 things don't communicate well with one another. And so reps become a bit disenchanted with that. And so like they're really not adopting as fast as they should. So in terms of like lessons learned over the past, like I would say like 2.5 years, again, where like the AI is kind of like really making a dent in terms of like the penetration within like organizations. First and foremost, I said this, but AI is not replacing SDRs. 2024, the year like I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars went into like the AI SDR space, and this is actually from the B2B GTM report, like that came out in October 2025 by the team of Growth on Hinge. I will actually add a link here, but they were asking people about like what are the initiatives that you guys have undertaken in the past 12, 18 months that have had no impact or really limited impact. And so here you can actually see some of their responses, but AI SDRs have not like really produced anything. And again, because I think if you go back to my slide with like the brute force approach, AI SDRs are just brute force mostly, right? They're not like targeted or like augmentation machines. And so really the market is disenchanted with AI SDRs. So that's like really not worked. The other thing that you learn by working with sales teams and kind of like even internally by understanding how like our internal users use AI. Again, we talk with engineers, and engineers, they don't context switch so much, right? So they read some documentation and they're actually like in flow state, in flow work, and it's so interesting because like in the flow work, they basically spend like 70% plus of their time in their IDE or their terminal. So it's really easy to just deploy some AI within like those places because it's just one or two places again, and they're kind of like getting convoluted with Cloud Code. So for engineers, it's really easy to augment their flows. Again, and there's other reasons why it's easier, right? So like again, like code either compiles or it doesn't, so it's really easy to kind of like produce quality there. For sales, it's kind of like a bit harder to validate. But just the fact that they don't context switch so much is so much easier to kind of like deploy some AI and kind of like enable those teams. But for sales teams, they context switch a bunch. They're in between meetings, they're prospecting, they're writing emails, they're in their CRM, they're doing internal syncs. And the thing that is interesting is like for every single one of these calls within the pie chart, they have different tools. They will have like three different prospecting tools, one for searching accounts, one for like validating emails, one for getting phone numbers. So like the context switching is just like really through the roof. And so whenever like you want to think about like deploying AI for sales teams, you really need to deploy it where they are. So whatever solution you're providing them, like you need to be that AI needs to be to have like full context from anything that they're doing. Like you need to be within all of their workflows, within all of these little parts of where they're working. And then like the other thing that is very interesting is kind of like and we've seen this like with like you always have like smart users of AI and like less like, average users of AI. You need to make the AI more push versus pull. Instead of like having the rep go there and like have another chat interface where they can ask questions, no, you can actually if you own the workflows, you know the outcomes of specific conversations that they've had in the past, right? You know the CRM, you know what they're up to right now. And so you can actually make these AI augmented flows more pull, right? So you actually send data and information to the rep instead of asking or having the rep ask you for information. Especially in sales, we see this as being like a really important thing. We call this like invisible AI. So it's kind of like you're just in all of the flows of the rep, and all of these have kind of like you've done a lot of AI research, but the rep is kind of like not really conscious of that. It's just like a stream of information that is coming to them that is relevant to them.
Mica, just a quick question on the previous slide. Why do you think it is important? I think this whole concept of push versus pull and invisible AI applies to so many other roles within a company as well. So why do you think it's particularly important from a sales standpoint or from a salesperson standpoint that it should be that? Like, do you think they feel more empowered when they have the context, but then they make the decision themselves instead of actively chatting with a system instead of people? Like, well, what was your thought process there?
Yeah. So I'll start with this, which is kind of like put yourself in the shoes of a rep that is like 500 named accounts that they need to target this quarter. For the
Yeah.
quarter just started, like 500 accounts that I need to target. Within those 500 accounts, I have 10 potential entry points. So 5,000 people.
Mm,
So I could actually wake up every morning and ask questions about like my 500 accounts and my 5,000 people,
mm,
or an AI, which is actually just doing 24/7 data collection, 24/7 like monitoring of my CRM, and then telling me, hey, this happened.
mm.
What do you want to do with this? It's kind of like bring that information to the rep. It doesn't mean that like some fully autonomous, again, that's I'll talk about this, fully autonomous flows can happen, but for the rep, it's you have this thing where open your ChatGPT now, it's going to say, hello, what do you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like you go somewhere, it's kind of like, hey, Mica, like this happened yesterday, like the VP, this company that is like within your accounts, they hired a new VP of sales.
Yeah.
And like, you engaged with them like 6 months ago, and like they've closed lost because you didn't have this product. Actually, I saw in your latest blog post that that was shipped. Maybe you want to re-engage.
Mm. So it kind of reduces like this cerebral overload for a person.
Yeah, because you simply can't. How do you keep track of 5,000 people and all of their emotions,
Right.
right?
Right.
How do you keep track of all of the news that happen across 500 accounts? And how do
Mm.
you know like the close loss reasons for 500 accounts and when to revisit them? It's just like impossible for humans. This is the perfect example like where AIs are so good at. Like you can just give them a bunch of data, right? They have like they have full context of all of these things. They can monitor data like every 24 hours, and then
Right.
just tell me what's important. And I can actually apply my human judgment on, oh, this makes sense. I really want to revisit, or this one I want to park. I want to use the information and park it. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Um, Autonomy and learning, like again, like a bit like related to your question, which is kind of like there are certain things like we've learned that like reps want various levels of autonomy. So if you think about like you have like the full manual flow of a rep, right? They want that. Funny enough, they want that. If you want like it's kind of like self-driving car, like they still want to drive the car, they still want the wheel there. They want it to sometimes be in lane assist when they're in the freeway, and sometimes they want it to be like in the city, like there's traffic, like full autonomous mode, right? So like we've learned from reps that there's like even if you provide them like with a full AI autonomous thing solution, they don't want it. They kind of like they want it for a percentage of their flows, but they want them some AI assisted flows and they want some like full on manual flows. And that was very interesting. Like, contrary, and I was not expecting that to be so true because I think for self-driving cars, I feel like people will want it to be like just full self-driving. But here, like it was really interesting to learn this. Another thing that they want is kind of like, they're taking actions. They're saying, okay, this was good. I'm doing this. They're taking actions, and the AI is actually monitoring all of their actions. So they expect it to learn, right? So they don't they don't expect it to kind of like teach them all of the time the same thing. It gets very annoying. So like there's this thing where like it's like your companion, your sales companion. You're really expected to like if you do 10 times the same thing, like the 11th time, you shouldn't be able to do it. And it's so interesting because like we have like AI learning from humans, but also like humans learning from AI. And so like, and you can have like human does certain things, the AI does certain things, and they both actually get better with one another. So that was also like a lesson learned. And then I think related to your question, so like it's kind of this, right? Like there are like problems where AIs are so good at. There are problems where humans are very good at, and sales sits at the intersection of these two things, right? AI can keep context and have like and do full on research around all of your accounts and all of the signals that were like relevant that happened yesterday. And as a human, you can't, you're not like we're not good at that simply, right? But then as humans, we have like we've engaged with people in person. We've had a meeting. We met someone at the conference. We have like all of these things that are kind of like related to human judgment. And ultimately, sales is about like the exchange of trust between human beings. Like abstract entities such as companies that are not buying from one another. It's like in the end, like it's two people buying from one another, making that decision, and that ultimately is like very much about trust, right? And it's kind of like a very unique human endeavor. And so here, like we really think that sales is interesting because it sits at the intersection of like these two Venn diagrams where we believe that AI will allow an augmentation of human judgment. And again, like we're talking about augmentation, and as we talk about augmentation, like how do we kind of like think about it, and how do we think about implementing some of that? And so first and foremost, I want to say like we start with consolidation. Again, we might be right, we might be wrong, but we believe that like really consolidating a lot of your tools while still integrating with a bunch of others is the most important thing. And the consolidation aspect of things is really tough because it requires you to build like a lot of different products. And just to give you the example of, I'm assuming that we all know Cursor, right? But Cursor is just a fork of VS Code, right? So it's so easy. You go like you fork it, and then like you have a version, you change the name, and like you have a working Cursor, like you build on top of it. But you can't really fork a sales platform. So that's like first challenge that is really tough. And as I said before, like with the different levels of autonomy, like people want still to do like their manual work. So they're still used to specific workflows that as you, it's like when they're using a car, like if they turn the wheel to the left, they expect the car to turn left, right? Not right. So there's all of these things that you still like need to accommodate on the human level. And it's you need to build that product. The product you need to build a product that is like very human focused and that where the humans kind of like expect a delightful experience for things that they're doing, but at the same time you need to accommodate for the other two levels of autonomy, the AI assisted and the full agentic flows. Then like we come into this, okay, like now you have the consolidated platform and we want to do less brute force and kind of like provide people with a lot more intelligence. And that's where I think the AI wins. They can actually do 24 listening across all of your accounts, across all of your signals, across all of the people that are within like your business repertoire. And then every 24 hours, they can actually tell you, hey, this is interesting. According to these past interactions, I think you might like this, right? So that's the first thing that you need to think about, like when you're kind of like augmenting the humans, kind of like every single morning, give them a sense for what's important or like where they should focus on today. Again, AI very good at this. Then it's kind of like about assembling context. When you once you tell them like what's like relevant, like what are the important signals, on top of that, what is the context that you can help them build? Meaning, imagine like one of again the example VP of sales that joined a company, then you can actually the AI can actually go back to the CRM and say like, oh, I'm bringing this context here, which is the context related to like close loss reason 6 months ago, with this one being the main reason. And we believe that taking a look at our latest blog post, this is actually solved now. So again, AI super good at this. And the AI can also go back into all of the past interactions with people from that account. And again, there's a new VP, but I potentially have engaged with the manager, with the director, so with a champion there. And it actually not only knows that, but it actually knows the channel intelligence. Like what, like if I reached out to you, if you and I communicated via message, why would I reach out to you via email with just a blank email? It's almost like I call this I don't know if you used to play video games, but it's like you're playing a video game, you're always responding at like level zero, even if you're making progress. It makes no sense. Like you're just like losing full context of like everything that has happened. Like, and so like here, sometimes in sales, you have this thing where like you almost respawn always at level zero. You don't have the context and you kind of like forget you have lost your channel intelligence. Um, and then like you provide all of this information to the reps and you apply the levels of autonomy that they kind of like desire. So you empower them to make the decisions that they want, and they usually potentially will start like with very much assisted and where they want to kind of like make these decisions for what's good and what's not, or what they want to act on and what they don't. And then eventually, the more actions they undertake, they would actually change like different levels of autonomy, right? So they actually like will make things um, full on agentic. And an example would be, my reps, like if you have a demo with them, they will send you a connection request automatically on LinkedIn. Say full level of autonomy. Meeting happened with this person. Like now go into like my agent enriches, gets a LinkedIn profile, sends a connection request on behalf of the human. So these are like, kind of like low touch, low lift things that like reps actually automate very fast. Now, if you're actually engaging with an enterprise account, you want to do a lot more research and you want to kind of like control the narrative a bit more. And so here's a typical story, right? The example that I was giving you, like an account that was like lost 6 months ago. All of a sudden, like the AI resurfaces that like they have a new VP of sales, and a new VP of sales is usually correlated with like reevaluation of tech stack. So they will actually be in the mood to talk. And again, the AI noticed this, like, and actually brought it to me. And unless I'm actually looking at this, like, and just doing really a pull for that information, it's really easy for me to miss that information. Then the AI basically goes into that opportunity. It knows that it was lost due to budget cuts, and it also like flags that there was like a champion that we worked with because they actually did a trial, and they know that actually they engage with me or someone else in my team about like some new product LinkedIn post. And again, that's like really tough to do, right? Especially like you're not monitoring all of your colleagues' LinkedIn posts for like some interactions that people are having with them. So like here, you can actually feed that all into an AI. And then again, the AI kind of like recommends I reach out and I multi-thread straight away, right? So I'm multi-threading to my champion who's engaging with someone in my team, and I'm multi-threading to like the new VP who's actually attending a conference where we are going to be sponsors and we'll have a booth there, kind of like inviting them for a coffee or for like a dinner that we're actually co-hosting at the conference. And again, this is just like one of those flows that is like, everything here makes a lot of sense. Everything here seems very doable, right? But the amount of companies or the number of like AEs or sales teams that are actually operating this way is very minimal, right? Because again, you're operating from a disjointed tech stack, right? So like you have like your data, your CRM, your engagement solution, your LinkedIn solution. All of these things are so disjointed.
Yeah.
They don't talk with one another. So all of a sudden, like maybe your data found this one thing, but how do you propagate the information from the CRM or the blog post into your engagement solution? And how do you propagate then into your LinkedIn solution, right? There's all of these little things that make like the adoption. And I think this is one of the main reasons like why adoption of AI is actually really tough in sales. It's because like we just operate from a lot of different tech stacks. And again, how do we make this happen? So this is a typical like view that you have when you join Ample Market. So if you have an account, like you log in every 24 hours, you get presented like with a feed of like information, right? And so I call this I call this like a Spotify day list. Like on the left hand side, you have like a recommendation of like all of these little all of the accounts and all of the individuals that are within those accounts that match like your profiles and your accounts assigned to you within the CRM. And then you have like a lot of different signals that were picked up. And then on the right hand side, like what you have is kind of like a way to engage. So I call this like Spotify day list meets Tinder. And I was never a user of Tinder, but I gathered like, you can swipe right or left on the things that you're doing, right? And by swiping right or left, the human in the loop is actually teaching the AI, right? So actually, if I swipe right, AI likes, learns. If I swipe left, AI asks me, why are you swiping left? And let me see if I can learn for the next one. And so here, for example, past close loss opportunity with Phil. The context is already built here. So like again, there's an AI that actually fetched this signal that enriched the Phil as like one of my potential buyers. Close found like a close loss opportunity, and then like goes into building like context here on the right hand side with a LinkedIn message. And again, it's bringing that context. I remember we spoke a while back, and your team was using Sales Loft with renewal season coming up. So it's actually the AI is actually suggesting the rep what to do. Not only that, it's actually building like a full-on flow on behalf of the rep. So in this case, it's kind of like sending a message or asking me if I want to send a message, which I can fully change. But it's actually augmenting the rep with voice too. So meaning like this rep, see like how it's not doing anything on email because again we talked, and so I have like a thread open with this person on LinkedIn. And I've sent voice messages to this person in the past. So it's actually like now sending a quick message. And then it's actually going to act on behalf of me with a voice message. It's kind of like going to copy my voice and kind of like send them like a voice message within that flow. But again, all of these things, it's really putting the human at the center. This feed changes every 24 hours, meaning like to the point of the 24/7 listening things change, like right. So like new VPs join, new job openings happen. Like people are constantly. I talked about like the cost of information being zero. So less like there's a lot more information. It's really hard to parse all of that information. The good news is that I can actually help me parse that information. I can just teach my AI what is the information that I care about that is usually tied to like positive interactions with me. And as I said before, like it's kind of like if you consolidate, right? If you're like B2B data, your first party, all of these things like live under the same roof, you now all of a sudden have the AI bringing things to the human and the human engaging with AI and saying like good or bad, right? So like this is actually like amazing, so I want more of this, or this is bad and I want less of this. And funny enough, like when you said you want more of this, you remember like I told you that coding was so easy because it's either compiles or it doesn't. So it's actually the iteration cycle is so fast, and that's why like these models are so good. But for sales, it's tougher. But now all of a sudden, like if your AI is actually within all of these areas of like your workflows, what happens is like we will know the outcome. So the human is saying all of this is good, and so like we eventually with a sales cycle with a delay of like I don't know like 6 weeks, 9 months, depending on like what your sales cycle is, we will actually close the loop. So we will know like because some reps can say everything is good. It's like no, not everything is good. Come on, and some reps are going to be like very selective, and so like you start really honing in on the things that are good. And all of a sudden, like by one rep actually taking the good actions, kind of like teaching the AI more, you send a message to the man, and I don't have a screenshot here, but like we send a message to the manager, it's like, hey, Mica here is doing all of these things that are actually very much correlated, like with success. Do you want us to kind of like, do you want the AI to kind of nudge all of the others to actually act more like him? Because like we believe that that actually would give you more success. So you can actually have like on the enablement side of sales teams, right? Sales teams are really tough to enable. You could actually have AI as kind of like a top-down enabler by selecting the best sales teams because it knows the loop, it closes the loop, right? And so all of a sudden you can actually provide much better recommendations there. And again, this what we believe is kind of like it really requires you to build like a one consolidated solution where the reps are undertaking. And you can actually own all of the channels of communication of one rep and all of the data and all of the signals. And if you own all of that, if you have eyes everywhere, if you have listeners everywhere, you can actually do like very unique recommendations. And then like just some results that we've seen like over the last year. But productivity gains. So this is actually like what this is showing you that like one thing like when we look at like onboarding of new users, right? How long does it take them to create like a sequence for like one of their named accounts? And how long does it take them now that those flows are kind of like AI assisted? And by AI assisted, the AI is actually like when you create an account with an Ample Market, we actually do a lot of research about the company. So we fetch all of your product pages, we fetch your blog, you fetch like all of your public reviews, right? We fetch all of your case studies. So we really learn a lot about you. And so all of a sudden, like when actually you're building something, you're creating something, the rep is no longer blocked by that blank page. And it's actually, we provide them solutions and suggestions. And all of a sudden, like one thing that used to take them more than 2 hours to do, now it's just like they're activated within minutes. So that's one. And then like interaction rates. So you see that like the just manual only versus AI assisted. So like AI augmented, AI plus human in the loop, you basically double your interaction rates. And again, you double on top of productivity gains. So now all of a sudden, like it becomes very interesting. So you're actually compounding these two things. Productivity gains takes you a lot less time to do something, and you actually double your engagement rates. And again, like we believe that like really we're like in this era of hybrid work. Again, like it's already happening in engineering. Like engineers no longer need to write int main or whatever, like all of their functions, but they kind of like go from like a doc and they can actually just like nudge the AI to kind of build the code that they want. But we believe that like, we're no longer at the era of like, pure manual work doesn't scale and you'll be left behind. Like pure automation, things like the ASDR is kind of like just leading to more slop if you want and less results. And and AI really augmenting and sitting next to the reps, we believe is the way, is the sweet spot. It's the way to go. And again, you can cover all of them, but the sweet spot is really where like the AI and the human are actually collaborating and learning from one another. And yeah, that's our strong belief. We might be wrong about all of this, but that's where we come from with this. And yeah, hopefully this was insightful. And yeah, if you have any questions, uh, feel free to fire away.
Thank you, Mica. I think this was fantastic. I love how it tied into the human in the loop theme that we've been discussing within Sidebar as well. It was really good to see real examples of where the AI is being trained actively by the human that is using that, and also the fact that if you are training it wrong, it doesn't mean it'll stick to it. It'll resurface like a common pattern and say, hey, this is working. I thought that was fantastic. Thank you. This was really insightful. Given that, Sidebar typically is a group of a lot of product people, and I think their thought process is how do we build something that you've built like this? And there was a question from Mushin. Mushin, are you still there? If so, do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for handing over the mic. I was curious as you were talking about the different levels of automation. Have you found there to be persistent use cases where there is always a preference for manual or hybrid or automation, or can it vary based on just personal preference?
Very a good question. So it's it's convoluted, but like think about this as like almost an economic model. Like some actions are very cheap and some actions are very expensive, right? And the outcomes of certain actions, the risk reward to certain actions is very different. So, for example, like the example of like connecting with someone after an interaction, or you meet someone at a conference, you scan them, like connect automatically. I have an agent built for that, like a workflow. It's so easy, right? Nothing like people are just really open to that. Now for the full-on manual, I would say like, look, if you have like, and we have customers like this, like Cerebus would be an example, like, and their reps have a really limited number of accounts, so they actually like they have like only like a few, I can say, but like they have a really limited number of accounts. So every action there is worth a lot, meaning like every action there is worth a lot, and so they kind of like want more of the manual workflows and the AI assisted workflows. And for them, since there's like not so much happening, they don't want to really automate a lot of things, like the full agentic autonomy. They're not really looking for that because all of the actions that they undertake, given their ACV and the number of accounts that they have, they're very they're very valuable actions if you want. Now, if you sound again, if you're an enterprise AE, if you think about like people, enterprise, mid-market, or SMB, right? SMB will be skewed towards more automation or like more autonomy. As you scale in like your enterprise, like you get less accounts, all of your actions are actually worth a lot more. And it's not like that they're actually saying no or changing anything, but they just want more control. They just want to be in control of like whatever ultimately happens. And because like taking like a wrong action would be the, the risk function there would be too damaging for them, given that they have such a low number of accounts. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does when you frame it as risk versus reward. If you're taking a very high risk with the AI being wrong, then you probably actually want to be that human in the loop, to Sue's point in her previous workshop, to be the validator and making sure that the quality stays great and consistent. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mushin. Mica, if you don't mind, I want to share the slide for
Mhm.
getting NPS feedback. We can keep the questions coming, you folks, but then I'll just share my screen and share um, a
Oops.
QR code for you guys to scan. It'll be very valuable for both Sidebar and for Mica to get that feedback from you. So please scan this and give us your feedback. Um, any other questions about what we just discussed? Feel free to go off mute and ask your questions, because if I'm not able to see you, then I might not be able to call you. Okay, I'm not seeing, hopefully I'm not missing anything. Mica, I actually did have a question about when you were, so for each of these ICPs that you have, I know you broadly described your ICP as someone who has quotas, right? But for each of the ICP, depending on if they're if they're in an SMB or a solopreneur or enterprise, it's do you change the amount of automation versus human in the loop combination for them based on ICPs, or do all of them have the ability to configure what percentage of human involvement they need?
That's a good question. So we've been changing the way we onboard new. That's a very good question because like we've been changing a lot, like and testing a lot with the way you onboard new users, especially like, when I talk about like the invisible AI.
Yeah.
It's so important to kind of like provide value from the get-go. A lot of platforms in the past, you get in like you have a blank slate everywhere, and so you need to do a lot of things. We try to make it so that we create a lot of things for you as you're going through onboarding. Like as soon as you type your email, I know your company. I start like fetching all of this data about your company. Start like trying to fetch like your value props, reading your case studies, understanding your competitors. So there's a lot of stuff that already happened by the time you land in the dashboard. There's
Mm,
always you already have like some value. It's like it's not a blank slate. That's super important. So we've been changing the way we ask questions and we onboard users to kind of like have them land in a place that makes sense for the job to be done
right.
right at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
The level of we don't so like there's so all of that effort and that research happens and like we infer like your tone of voice, like your value props, like your competitors, like we set up a lot of things for you automatically,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't run as you create your account. We don't run anything automatically for you, really. Like we just we let because like people are a bit wary of like AIs, and they really want to gain confidence as they
Right.
start using the platform. But as they start using the platform, and depending on their persona, depending on the job to be done,
Yeah.
and within my feed, I didn't show you, but like at the top, you have like the actions, pending action,
Okay.
and you have like autopilot motions. And so like as a user gets more acquainted with the platform, let me show you
Mm,
this real quick. Okay, you're sharing. There's going to be two feeds, like one feed that is fully on autopilot where you can just see the logs, and another feed that is
okay.
kind of like a human enabled. But again, we don't take any actions as you create your account automatically for you. We take a lot of actions to set up your account and to kind of like give
Mm,
you a lot of data. The idea is kind of like to create like that wow moment within minutes, right?
yeah.
So, wow, okay,
Right. The
interesting, right?
aha moment, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's fantastic. So you're saying, so the aha moment for users is looking at all of that contextual information that they can then put to use rather than actually sending out their first sequence. So the aha moment's happening even before that. So
Yeah.
that seems like an intentional design choice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's how you gain their trust. Like the aha moments, like you log in, it's just, Jesus, how did you know this? How did you know that
Yeah.
this was a competitor? How did you're bringing me oh, okay, cool. And oftentimes that's just like the first aha moment. It's
Yeah.
not like what we define time to value. That's not time to value yet. Time to value is like a positive interaction.
Mm,
But that gets you closer to like reducing. So the point of reducing the barrier for them to actually take an action that actually gets them closer to time to value. And that
mm,
again, like we've reduced the time for them to make an action. Like it used to take them like more than 2 hours. Now it's just like a matter of minutes. All right. So like they take an action very fast when they're within the platform.
great, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Another sort of question I had was I've noticed with the way you guys did your company and also just your go-to-market motion was you built this thing called Ample Market University or Academy. What was the thought process behind that? Because I think that is so interesting that you had a full-fledged academy of how to use your product right when you launched. And at first, honestly, I mean, I was also a founder, early stage founder then, and I was like, wow, I mean, isn't that a lot of effort? But I saw the value because it automatically helps people get comfortable. How did you get to that decision of we need these videos and whatnot to onboard our users immediately and not really wait for them to be later on in their buying journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like it's enablement. It's kind of like like we use Ample Market to sell Ample Market, so I need to enable my team first, and so I
Hmm.
kind of like understand the challenges of enabling a team. Or I wouldn't say I experienced them firsthand.
Right.
So it was more like if you again it ties to the consolidated aspect of the platform. So if you're consolidating, you're changing a lot of workflows. Again, an idea for going back to the engineer, VS Code, Cursor, same, same. Like it's like you're not changing so much.
Yeah.
Now, if you go from like a thing where you're using like I don't know, like a lead generation platform, like an engagement platform, a LinkedIn platform, whatever. If you're using all of these things in a disjointed manner, all of a sudden I need to change all of the flows into just like this one flow. And so
Mm.
we wanted to make it as much as possible like user led that you can actually go back and kind of like learn for yourself. For example, like to learn Cloud Code or whatever. Like I was actually doing a lot of like
Yeah.
YouTubing and like seeing like what are people
Right.
building with this. And so we kind of like wanted to do that like from the get-go. Another interesting aspect of this is kind of like an AI optimization, like a search engine optimization for AIs, which is kind of like they love these videos, and so we can actually make them so that they're kind of like
Yeah.
descriptive of the platform and the features that we have. And
Mm.
yes, it took a lot of time. It's just like
Yeah.
my God, like I wish I had bloopers for those, but like I really underestimated that because I recorded like I think most of them, if not all of them. We're actually revamping this like, with the team now, but
I
at the
see.
time I was the one doing it. It's just
Oh,
like oh my
wow.
God.
That's founder
No,
grind.
it took me so much. I was like
Yeah.
because I had this I needed the perfect take. I was not like and
Yeah.
yeah.
That is so nuanced because I was doing a little bit research about what's changed for AI founders and product builders from SaaS. And one of the things was explaining ROI is such a difficult thing with AI products because there's so much, there's this mistrust with AI products and people don't really jump into it. There are enthusiasts who'll try it, but they won't jump into it. And one of the things I discovered, there is a pattern in all of the successful products that are doing this, is the founder explaining the product and the ROI. So the storytelling behind that has led to adoption more than saying, hey, buy it and you'll see the ROI. So that was the big shift. So it was cool to see you guys do that. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Time well invested.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, you guys? If not, we can wrap up the session early. I think there was a lot that we learned as tools for this product, but also as product people and founders building successful AI native products. So
And by the way, like if you have my email, feel free to reach out to me. The way we structure the team again, like we have like four main product areas. So we have four product teams with four product managers, like engineering
Okay.
managers. Like that's like how we. So if you want to discuss any of like the specific how we structure our teams, just feel free to reach out. Like we have like an intelligence team that is kind of like responsible for disseminating AI across the entirety of the platform. We have like a team that focuses on data. We have a team that focuses on engagement. We have a team that focuses on integrations. And we've just created a new team this quarter. I cannot share it yet because like there's a big product updates coming. But
Awesome.
and so we kind of like if you want to talk about product teams, just feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to share. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you all for being here and spending your afternoon with us and or morning, depending on where you are. This was
Coffee.
really, really, I know. This was really, really helpful. And it was fantastic to see behind the scenes of a product that is so loved and that's growing. So thank you, Mica, for being with us today. All right. Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for having me.
Take care.